I'm delighted to introduce you to tonight's speaker, Bill Schrack. A graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, the University of South Florida, and the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, Bill is a certified job search and career transition coach. He has spent the last 47 years gaining successful management experience across many industries, including education, pharmaceutical sales, and organizational development. His extensive entrepreneurial background and expertise gleaned while working with the Covey Leadership Center helps ensure that candidates receive highly diversified, seasoned advice. Today, his intimate knowledge and classical training in career transition and job search gives Bill a unique understanding of what works and what doesn't. Working with Bill will be a marathon, not a sprint, and when you cross the finish line, you'll be confident of the outcome. He resides in Barrington, Illinois with his wife, best friend, and business partner, Donna. They have 2 grown children who are both medical professionals. When not volunteering, Bill, a commercial pilot, can generally be found flying a helicopter for various charitable organizations throughout the Midwest, as well as spending as much time as possible with his twin granddaughters. In addition to executive director duties, Bill chairs the Executive Leadership Alliance and facilitates a variety of informative workshops. For more about Bill, visit his LinkedIn page. I'll put the URL in our chat. And with that, Bill, I will turn things over to you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Allison and Megan, and welcome everybody. Good evening on this cold January evening. As you can see on this opening page, if you Google job search during a pandemic, within a half second, you'll get 741 million results. So it's a pretty hot topic. It's what keeps us busy at the Barrington Career Center. We see hundreds of people coming through the center looking for jobs. And what we found is that with the pandemic, many different obstacles have been put in our place. So the year of the virus, 2020, is over, but we still have a long road ahead of us. And what we found is not only were millions of people sent home to try and work, but almost as many of those people have been put out of work. And that created this elongation of the job search process. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how to navigate that, how to get through it successfully. One of the other things is it took away our ability to leverage the negotiating power in the job search. So we have to be really careful when we're out there today. It's a whole different process. As my grandfather used to say, times are a-changing, and it's a new way of doing business. And ladies and gentlemen, there is no doubt about it. There's a whole different approach to what we're doing. Tonight, of course, doing the virtual call. I was just talking to Megan about 7-8 months ago, well, almost a year ago, I think, was the last time we were at the Arlington Heights Memorial Library up in the Henderson room, where we would gather with 100 executives from around the Chicagoland area and conduct our workshops that we're going to try to do tonight in an hour and a half. We're going to try really hard to get the essence of what the job search is all about, but really it's going to take one-on-one coaching and a lot of discussion to help you get through this process. And we offer our services. I offer my services. I look forward to getting together. And I see Chrissy already sent me a LinkedIn request. So anybody that wants, jump on my LinkedIn page and connect with me. I'm more than welcome to sit and chat with you. The hiring process has slowed down drastically. Now, I tell everybody that businesses are misbehaving, meaning that we send letters, emails, texts, we call, and we don't hear back from them. And another part of my day, I am actually an executive recruiter also. And I can tell you that those people don't even return my phone calls, let alone people in search. So it's not just the fact that they're not calling us back. They're just trying to figure out how to conduct their business and stay alive. Companies have pushed people out. They're trying to be safe. And at the Career Center, we can't meet right now. We have to do everything virtually because of the coronavirus until everybody's vaccinated, until we have some type of herd immunity. And then when we bring people back together, medical experts are telling us we still have to practice social distancing, wear masks, constantly be washing our hands and sanitizing our surroundings. So it is really an interesting approach to how we're going to be living in the near future. With that, As people were pushed out to work from home, companies realized business was going to change. So people were put on temporary furlough. Well, now what we're finding is those furloughs have become permanent. So if you could mention in the chat portion here whether or not you're unemployed, and that way I can see what the tally is of number of unemployed people that we have attending tonight. I took a look at a study that was done by a Stanford economist back in December. It was published just a week or so ago about where people are right now. And what we see here is that about just not quite 40%, 42% of the people are working remotely. They're out of their offices. When you look at the Chicago Tribune, there was an article recently that C.B. Richard Ellis, one of the largest real estate property management groups, commercial real estate groups in the United States, said that 47% of their clients either were not going to renew their leases or were going to drastically reduce the footprint of their current locations, which means the American workforce is probably going to be working from home much longer than they anticipated. Now, 24% of the workforce is in fact working, but these are essential workers, people in pharmacies, hospitals, medical workers, frontline workers, et cetera. But the remainder, that 33% that's home, either furloughed or terminated, are probably the people that we see and we talk to the very most. In December, we thought we were seeing a dip in unemployment, but actually it was a slight increase, all the way up to 6.7%. If you remember back in June, that was almost 14%. So everybody was clapping and saying, hey, fantastic, look at the job numbers. Well, that 6.7% actually equates to almost 12 million people who are unemployed. That creates a very, very big problem, and here's why. Take a look at this graph, which talks about the old supply and demand economics. And as you see here, when you have a high supply of workers, the demand gets much lower because the hiring manager has more people to select from. And what the numbers have actually have borne out is that we're seeing between 250 and 300 applicants for every job posting. So it's just a nightmare for these poor companies to try and work their way through all these applicants. And in fact, what we're finding is they're only taking generally the top 20 to 25 and working through those. The others are still just sitting there. They're not getting rid of them. They're just not working them. And that's the reason you're not getting many calls back. So let's talk about a little bit about what we should be doing. Well, think of it this way. What if there were a way? What if there were a way that you could land your next position 25% faster than others? Would you be interested? It almost sounds like an infomercial, doesn't it? Wait, there's more. But in reality, there is a whole bunch that you can do. And that's what we're going to reveal to you tonight. All right. And there's a group called SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management. They published a study recently, and I think they probably do more studies than we ever see. And very interesting information. And it's helpful for us here tonight because first and foremost, you have to be patient. What they're finding right now is it takes somewhere between around 42 days on average to land a job for every $10,000 you're trying to replace. So let's say you're looking for an $80,000 salary. That means it's going to take you about a year, 336 days on average to land a position. So be patient, work through that, but work diligently. And that's not just saying sit back, eat bonbons and watch all the different, binge watch all the old TV shows, but it's saying you're working very specifically on activities that will lead you to an interview. And you need about 20 solid interviews to get a firm offer, according to the SHRM study. Now, even though this is hard data, it does really bring up a lot of angst in most of us. So what I wanted to talk about now is what happens if you don't approach this properly, or what's going to happen to you when you're out of work, especially during the pandemic. All right, first and foremost, the job loss is one of the worst emotional stresses you can bear. You've been kicked in the gut. It is sometimes just right out of the blue. In fact, I was coaching somebody earlier today, and she said, you know what? I was sitting at my desk. Everything was great. My department was on budget. We were ahead on projects, and I got a call from HR saying, hey, Lucinda, can I see you in the office? And she thought, oh, great. I'm going to get my new hire. When in fact, what happened was they fired her. The board made a decision to cut back, and she was one of the individuals squaring the horsehair. So very emotional, very stressful. Next, we are social beings. We're creatures of habit. And we love going to work. We love interacting with people. We miss that social interaction. But when we have to work from home, it causes cognitive dissonance. And we have to create all kinds of new habits. And creating new habits is very difficult. In fact, we are 95% of what we do on a daily basis is habit. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever driven home, pulled into your driveway, and then cannot remember the last stop sign you stopped at or the last turn that you made? And the answer is, of course, because our brain is wired in such a way that we take repetitive events and we internalize them and they become our habit. Working from home is not a habit because we start at age 5 or 6, leaving the home to go to school, which is a work, and then continue that all the way up through our adult life. Next is working alone and without accountability. Especially now, if we are in a job search that we've never done before, or when we did it last, it was quite some time ago, things have changed. You need a guide, you need an accountability group, you need somebody to assist you and coach you through that process. And without it, the process slows down. But one of the secret sauces is that accountability group we call a job search work team, which you work with a team of individuals on specific activities on a weekly basis that moves your job search forward. In order to do that, as Allison mentioned at the beginning, I am a professional pilot also, and began my career. I've been a commercial pilot for 47 years. I have a lot of hours in the air, thousands and thousands of hours, be it in fixed wing or in helicopter. I never take off from terra firma, never go into the air without a written plan. So I know where I'm going to take off. I know the direction I'm going. I know the route I'm going to end up taking. I know what potential obstacles are in the way. I know how to get around those obstacles. And I have a specific destination in mind for landing. Same thing in the job search. You need a written document that talks about the route you're going to take and identifies the target where you're going to land, where you're going to get a job. That's called a job search project plan. We all network. Before the pandemic hit, we were doing an inordinate amount of networking. Every restaurant, every bar, every library, everybody had a networking event. But what I found was that it wasn't purposeful networking. People were networking simply to get out, sometimes just to socialize, other people just to get their name out there. But in fact, it wasn't effective. So our purpose tonight is to talk about ways of becoming more effective and efficient in our networking process. We sometimes spend a little too much time applying online. In fact, as you're going to see in a few minutes, we've done studies, and our most recent study tracked 1.5 million applicants to the various job boards, the LinkedIn, the Monster, the Indeed, and so forth. And what we found is less than 0.1% of those applications led to a job. So the point is, yes, you're going to be applying online, but that should not be your strategy for finding a job. Now, the last one here is neglecting LinkedIn and social media. Now, if you're working and you're not careful, and you don't watch what's on your LinkedIn page or what's on your social media, you can get fired. In the last month, I've had 2 clients come to us, both who have had very high level positions, who posted things on their social media accounts. Their employers saw them and terminated them. And in both cases, they got legal representation. In both cases, they lost. So we're going to talk about social media in a little while and show you why you really need to be careful with what's out there. In fact, if you try to find me on Facebook or Twitter or any of those things, you'll be hard pressed, because I'm trying to stay as low down as I can. I do have a LinkedIn page, and we'll talk about why I have that in a little bit. If you're in the job search, what you're going to find is that almost 90% of recruiters and hiring managers use LinkedIn as their source of where they find people. And we'll talk much more about that in a few minutes. Now, I know most of you feel this way. I've felt this way in the past as well. Because what you're experiencing, this kick in the gut, this job loss, is one of the top 10 stressors in life. And that's a key facet, because back in the 60s, there was this whole wave of new medicine and expanding into psychiatry and sociology and trying to figure out how to live a better life. And I truly think it came from the hippies and the communes back then. That's when I was in college. But what they found was very indicting evidence on stress. And here, this was from way back in the late 60s, and it hasn't changed. What they have found is that losing your job is in the top 10 of the stressors in life. Now, the reason that's so important is that if you get one, and even more than, if you get 2 stressors, the effect on your health is dramatic. And sometimes it's silent, and you can have a heart attack, you can have a stroke, get an ulcer, all kinds of things happen as a result of stress. In fact, one of the biggest things that you need to accept and you need to embrace is the fact that your body, you've all heard of the fight or flight syndrome. Well, your body reacts to this stress, and it creates something called cortisol. And that's the main stress hormone in the brain and in the body. And it's as a result of external stresses, your cortisol levels have a tendency to go up. And chronic exposure to cortisol causes all these things. Number one, how many times have you awoken after being in bed 10, 12 hours perhaps, and you just feel awful? You feel fatigued, lethargic, and so forth. You could also have a very silent killer going through your system, increased blood pressure. So please make sure you get your blood pressure checked fairly regularly, because it can creep up on you. And when that happens, that starts to destroy your blood vessels. You can end up with a stroke, a heart attack, failed kidneys, any other malady that your physicians can talk to you about, but all caused by increased blood pressure. Now, we call it the COVID-19, meaning the extra 19 pounds that we put on around our waist because we don't get out, we don't exercise. I will submit to you that if you're under a lot of stress, you're getting a fair amount of cortisol dumped into the body. And there is scientific evidence that cortisol increases cause the body to, in a protective manner, put weight or add fat cells around your waist. And when you see that you can't get into your pants, that's an indicator that you're probably under a fair amount of stress. And especially guys that don't want to admit it, and moms, women that are responsible for not just a job, but the house and everything else in life. Sometimes this stress can really cause not just a weight gain, but can cause a lot of other issues in your body. There we go. And lastly is, how many of us have ended up not getting good night's sleep? Well, that too is because of additional cortisol being dumped into the system. We need 6 hours of undisturbed sleep. And if you're not getting that, you need to ask for some assistance, because after a period of time, people always brag, oh, I can live on 4 hours of sleep, 5 hours of sleep. Well, the data is in and you can't. It is very bad for your health. And then lastly, and probably the most obvious, is you're just crabby and you're cranky and you're in a bad mood all the time because you got fired. And now you're trying to handle all these other stresses that are being thrown at you. So add all that up, and I'm here to tell you that you need to grieve to get through all this. You need to accept that you've been kicked in the gut. You need to grieve it. You need to go through the process because it's natural. These are the stages of grief. One of my visiting professors back in 1968, I guess it was Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and she identified the stages of grief. These are the 5. But when books put this type of a picture out there, it's really not the right representation. Most people think that you start here with denial, and then you kind of take this little meandering path and you go through anger and some depression. I'm here to tell you that's not true. What we find, what we see, is this tangled linguini, this mess over here where you're starting at a job and you're trying to get out that other end unscathed. Now, I was able to go back and dig out one of Dr. Ross's slides, and here's what it was. This is the grief cycle. And you notice that you definitely will start with denial or shock, and sometimes people will avoid it. They won't tell anybody. They'll hope that it's a bad dream. They'll wake up, it'll be different in the morning or whatever it might be. But as you meander through, you become very frustrated, very, very mad. Sometimes you get to a point where anxiety, you have social phobias, all the different types of anxiety that hits you as a result of this job loss. But you don't necessarily then move directly into depression. You could go back into denial, or you could jettison forward and lie to yourself and accept it and believe you're going to move forward, which is what many guys do. And they just think, oh, I can get through this. I'll just put my head down and keep going. And then a couple months later, you get shot back into anger and then depression. And usually you get into this cycle, and sometimes they call it PTSD. And I'm sure most of us have heard of that. So here's my point. How many of us have little ones at home? And how many have Legos that sit on the ground at night? And if you're walking in the kitchen or walking through a room and there's a Lego there and you're in your bare foot, well, you end up slipping, sliding, falling. When that happens, very often we'll hurt an ankle, we'll hurt an elbow, we'll hurt our hip. And we're not embarrassed. We're not reluctant in any form or fashion to go in and get it checked by a medical physician, a medical doctor. I'm here to tell you that the same thing needs to happen after a job loss, because mental health is very critical, not just to our overall health, but to be able to successfully land your next job. So my point being in all of that is it's not bad to talk to somebody. And if your mind hurts, talk to somebody. Here's a group that we refer people to. And you can tell them that you were referred by the Barrington Career Center. And they do have special rates to help us, individuals that may have financial issues. The group's called Samaritan Counseling. They have 5 locations in the northwest suburbs. There is no connection between the two groups. They too are a nonprofit organization, and they have helped many, many, many of our people. So to copy down the number here for Brian. Brian is their intake coordinator and is always willing and ready to help people and get them scheduled to come in and do an intake discussion. So the phone number 847-382-4673. And of course, right now, most of their work is being done, as you see here, via telehealth. Now, sometimes you get to the end of your rope and you just don't see that there's any way out. And unfortunately, we are seeing a much larger percentage of individuals that decide to take their own life. If you notice something, don't wait. Get help. use this phone number, 1-800-273-8255. That's the National Suicide Prevention Line. They don't judge, they're there to help. And it's far better to call and ask for some assistance. I've had 3 individuals who've called me at home on the weekend and at night saying, Bill, I'm at the end of my rope. I don't know what to do. One of those we did an intervention with. We called 911, got somebody over there right away. And the other individuals we were able to get referred into, and I was able to plug them in to this line. All 3 of them are back, and all 3 of them are saying, you saved my life. And I am so honored and thankful that I was able to get them the help they needed. Now, my point in all of this is accept it and then let's move on. There isn't really an easy answer to trying to find a job right now, but there is a proven system and it works now. And we've tested it. We've tested it through the last 2 major out of work situations. And now we've seen it over the last 7-8 months. We've seen it work really well at the Career Center. And the system is based on 3 books. So write these books down, order them on Amazon. You don't have to buy them new. You can get them in used condition, get all 3 of them for less than $50. The first one is written by Orville Pearson. Orville Pearson was a job counselor with Lee Hecht Harrison, and he was based in New York. Lee Hecht Harrison is a worldwide outplacement firm. And what they found was over the years, Orville had the best placement record, and he was quick, he was efficient, and he set records for the number of people that were landing jobs in a very short period of time. So they asked him to write down his method. It became this book. So pick it up. It's The Unwritten Rules of the Highly Effective Job Search by Orville Pearson. The other book talks about how to create your core messaging, how to take that message and deliver it effectively while networking. The book is The 20-Minute Networking Meeting, and it's written by Dr. Marcia Ballinger. And Dr. Ballinger is also a coach and has tremendous success in assisting people in connecting during job search. The last book, and it's actually the secret sauce that we use. Remember I told you earlier, you need some accountability. Well, there's a job search work team is the process that we use. And this book, Team Up, outlines the process of creating a job search work team and gives you all the directions, the forms, everything on how to run your work team. Now, we already have work teams developed all around the Northwest suburbs, and we have one in the Loop as well. So if you call us over at the Career Center, we might be able to get you connected. But these 3 books should be on your desk, and you should be reading them. You should be underlining, outlining, do everything so that they become part of your mantra. Here's the proven system broken out step by step. First, we mentioned that most of the people are working from home. So you need to have a home workspace. So we're going to devote some time tonight to what has to be done to have an effective and efficient workspace at home. Next, we need to talk about what you do. And so you have a daily plan. And I did spend a number of years with Dr. Stephen Covey. I worked at the Covey Leadership Center, and I also taught anything from time management all the way through project management and the 7 habits of highly effective people. But it all goes back to having this basis of a daily plan. We teach at one of the workshops at the Career Center, and it's called Quad 2 Time Management, which is an incredible process that helps you become very efficient in prioritizing what your day should be. Next, we want you to develop a job search project plan. And that's going to be your long-term flight plan that's going to get you through the process of where do you want to start networking? Who do you want to start talking to? Who do you want to get an interview with, and so forth? And it sounds very basic, but without the written plan, people have a tendency to slow down, get bogged down in the process. Also, with everything being virtual, you have to become very good. You have to become expert in all things virtual. And that means networking, interviewing, everything. And you have to be able to use the computer properly. You have to have a computer. You have to have a good computer with a good camera and a good monitor. And we're going to talk about that too in just a few minutes. And then finally, I fully believe that you must have a job search coach, somebody that's been through it. And we'll talk more about what it takes to become a coach and what you should be looking for when it's time to pick one. All right, let's begin. We're going to break down everything into these: working from home, developing your daily plan, your search plan, being good at virtual networking and interviewing, and then working with a coach. So that's our program right here. So let's talk about working from home. Imagine in your mind what it would be like if you were able to work from home and it looked like this. Everything was neat. Everything had a place. It was well lit. You were well dressed, well, almost, and you had your favorite beverage there. And the day just was nice. But in fact, what we generally see is something like this. This is what most of our workspaces look like if we don't take the time to plan and to organize and get ready for each and every day. Now, the biggest thing is that we're working from home, and our home really wasn't set up to be our workplace. So working from home, we really have to be able to incorporate and blend a whole bunch of stuff. First and foremost, this is where you live. This is where your family resides. And that's the primary focus of your home. But now, especially if you have children, it has become a schoolhouse. It's where you have to do a number of hours of study and learning on a daily basis, and you have to be doing some kind of work. And right now, your job, if you're unemployed, is to find a job. And we tell everybody that finding a job is a full-time job in and of itself. Now, if you're working from home, I can tell you just flat out, the easiest way to look at it and say, here's a bunch of barriers, reasons why you're not moving forward or you're not as happy as you could be, is because we're creatures of habit, remember? So let's take a look at what happens when we work from home. We start to procrastinate. And this is what we call the 4 horsemen of procrastination. Number 1, we are already full of cortisol. So we have this fatigue. And so we think what we need to do is take a nap. And I will tell you that if you're working from home, it's easy to sneak away and take a nap. What you want to do instead, if you're going to sneak away, is go jump on an exercise bike or go outside, walk up and down the driveway for 10 minutes or up and down some stairs from the basement to the 2nd floor. Get the endorphins flowing in your body, which will happen when you exercise. And that gets rid of that napping sensation. Secondly, it's so easy to run to the cabinet, to the refrigerator and grab a snack. And many times I find myself, I'll have hopefully a healthy snack, but I'll have a bowl of fruit or a bowl of nuts sitting on my desk. Well, those are still a lot of calories. And if I have more calories in and not less calories burned off from exercise, I'm going to gain weight. Now, I do an awful lot of work with the Brain Injury Awareness Program and neuropsychologists. And one of the things that neuro people will do is brain mapping. And we had them do a study and had them look at people when they were working efficiently. And we got to see what the brain waves look like. Then what we found is when your phone dings saying you have a text message or you have a voice message or you get a phone call or your computer dings and says you have email, that distraction changes your brain waves. And what the surgeon or the neuropsychologists found is that it takes 5 to 7 minutes to get back to the brainwave activity when you were highly efficient. And then take that, let's say 7 minutes, and multiply it times the number of social messages that you receive and the emails that you receive and the other distractions that you get from around the house. And you can see my calculation says you can easily waste 3.5 hours a day getting back to efficiency if you're not careful. So we have to become aware of what those distractions are, and we can actually plan them. In our time management program, I did a time management program for the International Fire Chiefs Association. And people laugh. They say, well, they're fire chiefs. They have to respond when the bell rings. And that's very true. But they also plan for all their high priority activities other than fighting fires. And when they plan them properly and they put some contingency plans in, as you can, they find that they get far more done in a 24-hour shift than if they didn't have the plan. And that's what we're talking about today. Lastly, minor chores. Walking through the house, you see things that have to get done. And very often it's that, hey, that's easy, it's quick, I'll do it. But in reality, what psychologists have told us is doing a minor chore, 9 times out of 10, you don't want to do it, but it's better to do the chore than to do the work sitting on your desk. So between the desire to nap, always having food in front of you, social media distractions, and other distractions around the house, you can see where you're being pulled away from the focal point of finding a job. The psychologists have also told us back in the day, there used to be a sign that said a clean desk is the sign of a sick mind. And in fact, what they found is when you have a clean desk, when you come into the office in the morning and the desk is clean, it's organized, it reduces your stress and improves your effectiveness. And the effectiveness is, again, based on those brain waves that they map out with those little nets and all the magnets that they put on your head. So let's take just a minute and let's talk about what the physical space should include in your house. First and foremost, you want to have a dedicated space with a door and proper lighting. Now, people will say, I don't have that. And I can pretty much say that I've been to a number of homes where we've been able to find really interesting and cool space where you can dedicate it to work and then close the door at the end of the day and walk away and forget about it. I've had people work in closets. I've had people work under a staircase in the basement. There may be a spare bedroom that you can dedicate. I had somebody that actually was in a linen closet and their back end stayed out, into the hallway, but the door was open. And people knew when that door was open, the family knew not to interrupt. And they had a phone there, they had lights, everything. So you have to have a door, it's dedicated, and it has to have proper lighting. Secondly, you have to have a good computer. Now, computers have gotten less expensive. And one thing that you need to have is a good camera and a good monitor. And if you don't, what occurs is you're not able to effectively involve yourself in virtual interviewing. So you have to have the good camera and a good monitor. The reason too for the good monitor is all the work that you're going to be doing. Without a good monitor, you will suffer eye strain, and that makes your job search even worse. Also, networking, router, high-speed access, all of that stuff. Remember, you've probably have kids at home. So now here it is, middle of the day, you're trying to do a Zoom interview. You've got a couple of kids who are each on their own computers trying to get on and do either streaming or access some videos for school. And maybe your spouse is on a computer trying to do something as well. And now all of a sudden you get jerky, you get poor internet connection. So make sure that you have an adequate access. And it means you may have to change your router, you may have to increase the data packets and so forth to be able to be effective for a short period of time while you find a job. Now, in our weather, now probably not quite so much, but a month ago, we lost power several times in a week. And luckily I have a surge protector so that when I'm teaching a Zoom class like this, if something goes out, I'll be back up in about 30 seconds. So a surge protector protects the computer from being pushed and damaged, and an uninterrupted power source, the UPS, is connected. And then my phone line is also over my internet. So it's a voice over internet protocol phone. So if I lose landline, I still have my internet phone. You must also have a good chair. Very important, especially if you're going to be spending time, and as much time as you're focusing now on trying to find a job. Ergonomically structured chairs are easy to find. They're not the sexiest looking things out there, but don't go, buying the space age, top of the line stuff like that. Just go and give it the butt test. Go test a couple of them. And the one that I use and that I like the most is, and I do have a very expensive executive chair that I brought from my business. I have one that I think I spent $110 on, and it's an assistant chair. Doesn't have arms, but it has a nice lumbar support, and it supports my bottom. So I'm able to sit here for hours at a time and not be fatigued. Now, desks can cost you an arm and a leg, but I will tell you that many people that I counsel, I tell them, if you're stressed financially, you need a good place to work. And you don't necessarily want to take over the dining room table, but that would be great space. So go to Home Depot, go to Lowe's, go to some place that sells doors and buy a damaged flat pine door. And you can get them for 25 bucks. And they don't look good, but boy, they are beautiful. They're big. They have a lot of space on them. Put a couple of filing cabinets underneath them. And on one side, because they're so darn big, you can put a little filing or a bookcase, and you have an office. And you can put it all together for pretty inexpensively. So those are the basic elements you must have in your office. And some people say, oh, this is crazy. Why do you go down to this minute detail? And the answer is that let's say you don't have a good phone or your computer is bad. This whole process is only as good as each one of these links. So you need to be prepared, and you need to have an effective place to work. All right, next, we're going to move from our physical requirements to what our day looks like. Let's plan what it's all about. Now, I go back. We are creatures of habit, and there is something that we have called the circadian rhythm. So let's follow it. Figure out when you're most effective, all right? And I want you to come up with a plan that helps you get up every day at the same time and create that habit. Once it becomes ingrained, it takes one of the stressors away from you. You will actually begin to sleep better. Next, when you jump out of bed, get a glass of water, maybe you suck down a cup of coffee, whatever it might be, but begin the day with exercise, 30 minutes of it. It will help create the endorphins. It gets the system moving. You're exercising during a fasting state. Hopefully you haven't eaten in the previous 10 hours or so. And that exercise will burn off fat and will not be burning off all the carbs that you have in your system like you do if you exercise right after a meal. So if you want to maintain weight or start dropping a little bit of weight, exercise first thing in the morning, and 30 minutes is really all you need if you do it right. Next, your activities of daily living are so important. I have been on Zoom calls where I've been embarrassed for the individuals on the other side of the screen. It's apparent they haven't been near a bar of soap or a shower in a week. And I can tell you, if you fall into that habit of appearing in public looking like that, you're not going to do well in an interview. So you need to always have a dress rehearsal every single day. Dress as if you're going to the office. Now, some days you can just dress from the waist up. But if you're doing an interview, you need to dress as if you're going to be in the interview in person. And that means all the way down to the shoes. And psychologists have proven to us that you feel better when you do that. Next, you've showered, you've dressed, now have a breakfast. I've been on calls where people have said, oh no, you don't need to eat a breakfast. Well, in December, Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, published the results of a 7-year study, and they compared people that ate breakfast and then a smaller lunch and an even smaller dinner. And they found that their carbohydrate metabolism was better. All their lipid panels were better. They were just in better health as a result of having a good breakfast. And that goes back to what my grandma used to always say, eat your breakfast like a king or a queen, eat your lunch like a prince or a princess, and your dinner like a pauper. So more food in the morning when your body's going to need it and be able to utilize it through the day, less at lunch and even less at dinner. And as for alcohol, if you're going to eat or if you're going to drink alcohol, don't do it within an hour of going to bed. Now, it may make you fall asleep faster, but I can pretty much guarantee it's going to wake you up somewhere between 2 and 3 in the morning as all the alcohol burns off and your glucose level starts to drop in your system. So it's not good for a good night's sleep. Lastly, as I said earlier, psychologists have proven that getting to the office when it's clean will help you get off to a good start. And lastly, we have to plan what we're going to do once we get to the office. So now we're going to move from a daily plan to let's talk specifically about what it takes to manage your time on a daily basis. Now, this is the summary of a 4-hour workshop. Okay, actually it's 3-hour workshop. So what you are going to get here are just some very succinct tidbits. So if you want more, give us a call and we'll talk about how to get you into one of those workshops. But number one, again, you must be in control. Time management is self-management. So we'll talk to you about how you control what you do on a daily basis. So figure out when you work best. I have some people, in fact, I have somebody that works for me that works better from 4 in the afternoon until 10 o'clock at night. So that's when they do most of their work. And occasionally I'll get an email from him at 11:30 at night, but that's when he's efficient. The rest of the time, he's a wreck. So don't try to change that. Try to fit in to when you're most productive, and then build a 6 to 7 hour day. 6 hours would be best on a 5-day week. And that'll give you 30 hours minimum for your job search. Treat every day like it's a work day. Get up and do exactly what we just talked about on the last slide. And then you're going to break out and begin your day with a plan. You're going to look at all your tasks. And this is simplified. I tell you to break your tasks down into A, B, C, and D tasks. But actually, we're going to put them into a quadrant of what is urgent, what is not urgent, what is important, what is not important. And where the intersections occur, you're going to get A priorities and B priorities. And your A priorities are those things that are urgent and important. The B priorities are those things that are not urgent, but they're important. And those are the two groups that you want to focus on every single day. And when you do that, you will end up being far more efficient. The other secret is once you have those delineated and broken apart, you do what's called a time estimate. You look at each one of those tasks and you just do a guess. How long is it going to take me? Will it be 20 minutes, 50 minutes, 2 hours? The key to it is you want to plan to be able to put about 3 hours a day into your A and B tasks. And those you will schedule on your calendar. Those will become appointments with yourself to complete those tasks. Then, if you have more time available, you can piecemeal what's remaining on your A and B tasks, either into the remainder of this day or push them forward into another day when it works best for your schedule. That's the key. Now, at the end of the day, you want to turn off your computer, turn off your phone, and I want you to review everything you did for the day. The beauty of this is you're never going to get everything done that you want. Now, you might every now and then do it, and that deserves a glass of wine at 4 p.m. But the point being, you're not going to get everything done, but if you just let it roll over to the next day, you're probably not going to get it done then either. But you want to make a determination of what is the importance of this item and when does it need to get done so that you can do it on your time schedule and not as a firefighter having to do it immediately, because if you don't get it done, it's going to create a problem. So once you've reviewed everything, you now kind of take a look at tomorrow, figure out what the schedule might look like, and you do pre-planning. Now, once everything is done, close the door, leave the office, and turn it off and enjoy your family. The next morning, when you get up, you want to be able to pull together that list, look at the day, and spend 15 minutes just reviewing. And all you're doing is you're spending 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening, and that half hour will give you an immense amount of control over your day. Let's now talk what it's all about when I get a phone call. When I'm sitting at my desk, somebody will call and say, Mr. Schrack, I just heard about you guys. I know you're a career coach. You know, I've been searching now for 7 months and I'm just not making any traction, and I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. So we have a checklist, and I start going through the different questions. And what I find is they've been spending most of their time sitting in front of the computer, going through job search, job boards. Now, I can tell you that on a daily basis, there are between 2,500 and 3,000 new jobs posted on job boards between LinkedIn, Monster, Indeed, and some of the others. In fact, in total, I think on this past Monday, we did a search and it came up with 670,000 unique job postings. Now, understand that those postings are on other landing sites, other job boards, which means that you can find them in all different directions. So there are millions of listings out there when you do a search. The problem is when we went back and looked at that 1.5 million applications online, what happened was we found that less than 1/10 of 1% of those applications turned into a job. So we don't want you to spend a whole lot of time there. We will give you more information on how to do it specifically and how to streamline that process. But here's the other issue. Remember, you just got kicked in the gut and you thought, my gosh, I did such a great job. And then my company had no loyalty. They fired me. So you now go on to a job board. You find a job posting that fits you perfectly. You believe you could do it in your sleep. You would love to do it. You absolutely love the company, you love the job. You think it was probably written for you specifically because it matches you so perfectly. You then spend 2 hours doing the application, the perfect cover letter. Everything is absolutely perfect. Then you sit and you wait some more. And the problem is that company has had 250 or 300 applications just like yours. And unless you use some of the tricks to be able to get your resume and your application to the top of the heap, they're right in there with all the rest of the people. And what does that do to your psyche? It screws with it. It makes you feel terrible. And it's not you, it's the circumstances that we're going through currently. So let's talk about having a job search plan that thinks about all that and gives you equipment to make you better in the job search process. Well, first off, we have proven, we have watched, we have followed people, and we find that people do land 25 to 30% faster with a plan than those that are trying to secure a job without a plan. Some of the other benefits are by focusing and having an understanding of where you want to go, where you want to work, it helps you focus with a purpose and network with a purpose. Tells you where you want to network, how you want to do it, who you want to network with, and when do you do it. There's a strategic plan there. Also provides you a very clear picture of what you're going to say. And this is your core value statement, your elevator speech. And it's the same thing you use when you're networking. It should be woven through your handbill, your resume. It is your interview central theme. It's your onboarding theme. So it is something that you have to develop early on. Also, it helps you work better with a coach. I told you I'm a pilot. When I fly from O'Hare to Detroit Metro, I file a flight plan, like my job search plan. My coach happens to be somebody called air traffic control. They're reading my plan. They know where I'm going. They know the direction I'm going, the speed I'm going, where I should be at every single juncture. The same thing with your coach. They will look at your job search plan and help get you through that process. And if you fall off course, which happens a lot, the coach can help you get back on course. All of that reduces a lot of your stress, gives you more confidence, and lets you sleep better. So let's talk about what you have to do to build your job search plan. Begin with the end in mind. This is one of Dr. Covey's 7 habits of highly effective people. It's habit number 3. You begin with the end in mind. If you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter which path you take. So when we build the plan, we build backwards. We figure out, what are your targets? Where are your roles? What do you want to do? You're actually starting with a clean piece of paper. You could rewrite, you could recreate yourself right now in your next role. You then defend what qualifications you have that allow you to take that next role. And the reason we do this is, if you're not qualified, then don't waste the time. Figure out what you have to do to become qualified. It might be taking a class. It might be become certified in that particular area. And then finally, identify companies that employ that role. And I'm going to have some data for you at the end that will show you that, your target companies, probably the ones you have in your mind right now, may not in fact be the ones you have once you've completed the process of creating a job search project plan. This is what it looks like visually, because your job search project plan helps you create that core message. And as I said earlier, that core message must weave its way through everything. It becomes central to your LinkedIn page. It's central to your handbill, central to your resume, and central to everything you do in your networking. Here's what the plan looks like, and I'm going to blast through it pretty quickly because this is all taken out of the unwritten rules of the highly effective job search. First and foremost, you need to understand who you are. I have interviewed thousands of people in my career. I've hired hundreds and hundreds of individuals. Very often I'll start, back in the old days, I'd start with, hey, tell me who you are. Yeah, it's a simple question. Just let's talk, break the ice. Tell me who you are. And if somebody were to say, well, I'm a hardworking sales manager, I do this, 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 and this, I would almost immediately glaze over, because I want to hear what your competencies are. What are those? What do you bring? How are you going to affect my business? How are you going to affect the bottom line of my company? And you can only explain that if you know who you are. So you do the StrengthsFinder 2.0, the Myers-Briggs, the DISC, all these psychometrics that help you know who you are, so you go into these interviews and you stand out from all the other people. Because not everybody can do this, but it's easy to do, so it's important. Secondly, to find who your targets are. We talked about that. Develop all the written documents, the handbill, the resume. We used to lead with the resume. Now we don't do that. We lead with a handbill. We lead with other types of documents that create intellectual curiosity on the part of a hiring manager to want to talk to you. And you don't want to be looking needy, and you don't want to appear to be, and even though you are, you have to have a job, you have to feed your family, but you want to come across as being confident and being able to meet the needs of that particular company. So in the preparation for these interactions, there are some key things that you say, key things you do not say. So that preparation is researching all about the company, what the company's needs are, what their pain points are, how have they been listed in the news, what's the cultural reviews on the company, what's it like to work inside. That's all the preparation that you must do, and it's all part of your plan. Then you want to network. And where do you network? Well, you network in the target companies, because that's where you'll get interaction with people that can help coach you and get you through the process. Nurturing your network is so critical. I would say right now, one of the most interesting exercises I go through is working with somebody that will share their screen with me. We'll go onto their LinkedIn page and I'll go through their contacts and I'll just pick people out. And let's say I pick up John Smith. I'll say, okay, tell me who John Smith is. And if they have to sit and read the background of that individual and so forth, then it's not a valid contact, or they haven't worked it. The nurturing of that network means that you get to know that person. They get to know who you are, and it becomes a mutually beneficial relationship, a connection for the network. Think of the network as you're going fishing and you're throwing a net into the water. The bigger the net, the more fish you catch. But that net will have a hole in it if you aren't nurturing that relationship. Ultimately, preparing for the interview, there are various stages, and we'll talk about what you have to do in a few minutes. Now, often people do not line up their references until the very end, and you must do that in the beginning. You need to line up people that will give you a good reference, and it's not a one-time phone call. It's a multiple phone call, because number one, will they do it? Great, you will. We'll be back in touch. Number two, hey, I've got my second interview at ABC Corporation. Here's what I'm looking at. Are you still willing to be my reference? You are? Thank you. I'll give you more information later. Third call, I've got my final interview. Here are the key points that they're interested in. Here's what the issues are within the company, and here's why I'm being hired. Can you address those? Yes. So 3 calls to prepare your references, so that when the company calls, they receive a pertinent reference, not just, yeah, you're a great person. And the other question is, would you hire them? Well, most of the people you didn't report to, they're colleagues and so forth. So you learn how to prepare your references. Finally, you'd be amazed at how many people show up late for interviews. And that's the kiss of death. So we'll work through processes to help you. I was with a young man, we were doing a coaching session, and it was 11:30. And he said, well, thank you so much. I'm now ready. I said, by the way, when's your interview? He said, well, it's at noon. And he had a 25-minute drive. So it was going to be a real problem. All right. Finally, we'll talk about evaluations and how you evaluate what your offer is. And remember, I told you, we don't have a lot of negotiating power right now during this pandemic. In fact, we had somebody that did not listen to us, and they were making $160,000 in a previous job. They'd been unemployed for 14 or 15 months. They got a job offer for $125,000. They went back and said, I can't take that. I need $160,000. So the company took their job offer back. So this poor person now doesn't have a job. So take it. If it's within reason, take it. He could have lived very nicely on $125,000. Now, why do we talk about all this stuff? Well, it's simple. If you don't have your plan, it's as simple as the old adage of ready, fire, and then aim. You're going to miss a lot of opportunities if you're not prepared. All right, we're coming down the home stretch. So let's talk about what it takes to be good at everything virtual, because that's the world we're in now. So you have to be good at networking, and you have to be good at interviewing. So let's talk about the LinkedIn portion, how to network. Okay, LinkedIn, we know 163 million at the last check were using LinkedIn for social networking. Now, what you're going to find is that hiring managers and companies, recruiters, are using it as their pool. That's where they search. 87% of the recruiters say they use LinkedIn, not just as part of their search, but that's their first step. So because of that, remember, we don't lead with our resume anymore. So it really isn't your resume. It should be your handbill. And if you remember the definition of a handbill, the handbill is your marketing piece. It's what presents you in a positive light without identifying where you have been. You can certainly put in accomplishments and things like that, but this is really meant to be a way to present your competencies and what you can do to solve business problems for other companies. So your goal is to make it relevant for the hiring managers. And to do that, there are some key elements that you have to have. And I look at a lot of LinkedIn pages every day. The first thing you have to do is you have to have a headshot, a profile photo. And what we found is if you don't have a photo, you're less likely to have anybody even take the time to view your profile. In fact, LinkedIn will tell you that if you have a profile photo and it's attractive, your profile will be seen 14 times more, or it's 14 times more likely to be viewed than ones that don't have it. Now that's the little photo. The next one is the photo behind you, the background photo. So upload something that gives you the ability to personalize your brand. For a while, I flew the news helicopter for CBS News in Chicago. So every week I'd change and I'd have a different skyline photo that I took from the helicopter, or different photos of me taking off or landing, because at the time, all my days and nights were spent flying that silly helicopter around the skies of Chicago. And so people would see that, and it created all kinds of chatter. And I would get job interviews from all over the United States because people would see that and say, oh, cool, if you can fly over Meigs Field, or if you could fly over O'Hare, you certainly can fly in wherever. So the background photo is really very, very important. Don't just leave whatever LinkedIn has as a standard background. Also, your headline. Now, your headline gets pulled up in the search, and there's a big controversy of whether or not, what you should say in your headline. So your coach will sit with you and talk with you about what's really relevant to what you're trying to do. So begin again with the end in mind, figure out what you want this to do for you. Then customize your URL. So here's mine. It's just linkedin.com/in/William Schrack. That's it. Very simple, very easy to remember. Now, you also want to be able to have contact information on your LinkedIn page. If you don't, people will keep going. Remember, this is where you want to connect with people. And if you don't have an email address on there, it's going to delay. I don't check my LinkedIn messages very frequently, although I do have them connected so they're forwarded. But I can tell you that I prefer using my email than going in and using LinkedIn messages. Secondly, biggest pet peeve out there is not finding a phone number. Now, the phone number will not show up until it's a first connection. So what you want is to have it there, and then as you connect with people, your connections now have your email address, your phone number, etc. So you can control that. And all other important things that you want to have in your contact section. So it makes it easy for people to find you. The biggest controversy out there right now is the Christmas wreath around your picture that says open to work. Well, you can actually be open to work without having the green photo frame around you. I'm not going to say one way or the other. Some people say, oh, it makes you look desperate. Others say, oh, it's perfect because it's what gets you found. You can do it whichever way you want. I have had people that have used it and they've been interviewed pretty quickly. I've had others who haven't used it and have gotten just as many interviews just as quickly. So it's whatever you want to do. Now, when you connect, it's so important for you to personalize your message. And I'll show you one in a few moments, but you must personalize it. Don't use that standard verbiage that's at the bottom when you go into connect. And a personalization will increase your probability of being connected tremendously. Now, once everything is done, you've got to be able to nurture, meaningfully engage with these people so that it is what it's intended to be. And that is a way for you to build a relationship, build a communication with individuals. And hopefully those individuals are in the targeted companies where you want to work. Most jobs are never posted. 70% never posted. And 85% of jobs are found through networking. So what does that tell you? You need to be networking and you look for the hidden job market. The way to do that is to network into the companies where you'd like to work, and hopefully you'll find a position. I have an individual that was at the Barrington Career Center, and we helped her land in 6 weeks, and her base salary was $215,000. And the way she did it was here. She networked and she got into a discussion with somebody at a company where she wanted to work. They then, in fact, met for coffee, and exchanged handbills, and one thing led to another. And the woman actually walked her resume and her handbill into a hiring manager at her company. Hiring manager loved it, took it into HR and said, this is the person I want to interview. That person, our candidate, moved right to the top of the stack and ended up being offered a position. Interestingly, there wasn't a job posting. There wasn't even a position, but they liked her so much, they decided they wanted her on the team. That is the secret. Now, you need to work on your LinkedIn at least 30 minutes a day. And here's an example. First off, your goal is to keep yourself networked and let your network know who you are. So what you need to do every day is take a look at who you currently have in your network. And you want to reach out to 10 of these people every single day. And you do it via email, not LinkedIn Messenger. So find their LinkedIn profile, go find their the contact information and pull up their email address. And then here's what you write. It's really simple. Hi, Sally. I was looking through my LinkedIn connections. I came on your name. I realized we've not been in touch for a while. I hope all's well with you. I've been furloughed due to the pandemic, so I'm in job search. Do you have time for a quick call to reconnect? So that is a simple message to somebody that you've connected with, and chances are pretty good that they're going to respond, and they'll respond positively to you. Next, you want to get into those companies where you're targeting. So what you'll do is, first and foremost, you'll go into your LinkedIn and you'll do a search. You want to look for all first and second level contacts at that particular company, and you may find some. And then reach out to 2 of them that are first and second level contacts every single day. Now, if you don't have connections at those companies, you can search for the company name on LinkedIn, and you can actually find a whole list of people that are on LinkedIn at that company. And here's a sample email that you can use. Hi, Sally. I was looking through my LinkedIn connections and came upon your name, and I realized I work as an IT manager or whatever it is, just like you. I would be honored to add you to my professional connections so we can collaborate in the future. Kind regards, Bill. That's all it is, and it works miraculously. People respond to that. It's not pushy, and next you'll then begin to nurture them. Let's talk about what you have to do to be successful in your LinkedIn or your Zoom interviews. Now, this stuff may sound silly, but again, I see hundreds of people. I have coached at my executive level. I've had 23 people land in the last, since March. And the people that were having problems, this is where I came up with the data, having worked with them and coached them. First thing you need to do is make sure your camera is at eye level. You're looking square into it. Think of it as being on TV. And you can tell when somebody that's an announcer is looking off to the side, and it's very distracting. Secondly, set your computer up so that the speaker view is up, and that becomes the basis of your whole screen, and you're looking at that individual. Next, you want to control what's behind you. You want a virtual background or a plain wall, and you certainly want to make sure that you don't have anything that's distracting behind you. And dress for success, and not just above the waist. I want you to, when you're going into an interview, I want you to dress the part as if you're being interviewed in person. And try a lot of different color combinations so that you're not being vibrant. I had somebody on a call a couple weeks ago that she had a beautiful sport coat on, or blazer, but it caused the whole screen to start moving because it clashed with what her background was. So test it, just play with it. Next, put a towel or something in the small of your back and sit upright so that you breathe better, you're in alignment, and you look better as you're articulating. And then lastly, close your door. You don't want people buzzing in on you. You don't want your cat coming in and walking across your keyboard, or your dog coming in and deciding they want to sit on your lap. Now, I've seen all of that. I even had a parakeet fly in one day. So close the door. Also, I talk about practice. I say practice, 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 but really perfect practice makes perfect results. So to do that, what you want to do is you want to record yourself. And you want to record the questions that you're most likely going to get. And I'm going to give you a couple of them in a few minutes. Listen to your voice inflections, watch for your eye movements, don't use your hands, hand gestures, and I'm good for that. I talk with my hands all the time. And when you get into an interview and hand gestures are being used, it's quite distracting. So if you're in an interview and you're a hand person, sit on your hands and don't eat anything. You'll look like Mr. Ed the horse when you're chomping on something. And you don't need to eat while you're in the middle of an interview. If you need to take water, get sips. Be prepared. Have a small bottle near you where you can take a sip. I had somebody the other day with a big old coffee mug, and when she took he took a swig, he was slurping. And the cup was so big and it was so close to the camera, it obliterated his face. Not something you want to do in a job interview. Let's talk about content. Content is so important. Again, you must understand the pain points of the company. What is their problem? Why are they hiring you? What problem are you supposed to solve? How will you impact the bottom line of the corporation? If you speak that language, you will be far different than most of the other candidates that are out there. And that will bring you to the top of the group. Next, focus on your stability. The fact that, yes, you're unemployed because your company had to shut down. Your company had to move in a different direction, whatever it might have been. But talk about how long you'd been there and how much energy you take to the position, how much you enjoy doing it. Give examples of what you've done for your team, how you've enjoyed being a part of a team, or any leadership positions that you've had. And certainly anything that you've done from a volunteer perspective that helps lend itself to what this job may be. And then lastly, I want you to be involved in active listening. That means you listen, you ask a question, you solicit a response from the other person, and make it a dialogue so that it's not something where you're just listening and then answering, but you're actually asking questions and you're trying to get somebody to talk more about that. So if you pull out a piece of paper and a pencil, here are some interview questions that we found recently that have come up and thought you might be interested in having them. One is, how have you been managing yourself during this time, and how have you been staying proactive? Can you, or have you worked remotely? How do you organize your day when you're working from home? How will you be, how will you feel if we ask you to come back to the office when it's safe? And how do you communicate with your team members in a remote setting? I'm going to give you the answers to these that we've come up with. So how have you been managing yourself during this time? Well, what they're trying to figure out is how you adapt to change and how you've done things in the past. And if you can portray yourself as being able to handle change and how to manage things, explain how you can pivot, stay connected, or if you've lost your job, explain what you've been doing as you began your search. That will be a very positive response to that kind of a question. Next, can you or have you worked remotely? Well, the answer is obviously. I've worked remotely, and if not necessarily in this particular situation, you may have worked for a company that had satellite offices and you've been able to work and communicate with people there. Or you may have an international company where you've had to communicate with people on the other side of the globe. But you want to emphasize the fact that you've been able to meet your goals and you've been able to meet the company's objectives and explain how you did it from a remote perspective. Okay, let's talk about organizing your day when you're working from home. And I gave you the answer a couple slides ago, but what they're looking for is they want to know that you have a system, you have a plan, you have the ability to do something when you're not under the thumb of somebody in an office, because the best remote workers are self-disciplined and they have a routine. And that's what you want to be able to show when you're interviewing. Will you be okay returning to a physical office when it's safe? Now, this is a bit of a loaded question, especially with what we saw happen at the Capitol last week. And what they're trying to figure out is, are you going to be able to follow their safety protocol? Are you willing to come back when it's safe? Or do you want to stay home? But the bottom line is you have to say, you need to confirm what their protocols are and then tell them you're going to support them. And if you're not comfortable, tell them. That's the most important aspect. You have to tell them. And how do you communicate with team members? when you're in a remote setting. And most people have found that this is really tough, especially gals. Women are juggling so many things, and guys are too, but women have the biggest responsibility at home. And so they're trying to do work, family, all the running a house, everything. And yet they're being pulled in all these different directions during the normal work hours. And the kids are there for school and so forth. So talk about what you've done. Talk about how you've talked to your boss, especially if you've had to take time off or take the kids someplace or do something. But just admit, here's how I did it, but here's how I got everything done. And by the way, I got it done on time, above the level of productivity I expected. And actually, I think our budget was, we beat our budget. So we can do this. All right. Now, you remember, being an active listener means you're going to ask questions. So here's some questions that you can ask. How has COVID impacted your team and your company? And compared to other teams, was yours more or less impacted? So ask about how COVID has impacted them as a team and the company. And it's tough out there right now. Everybody is scratching, trying to be effective, efficient, and profitable. So why did you decide to fill my position, this position we're talking about right now, rather than other roles that you could have hired for? So what you're looking for is, what is really in my position? What am I going to be doing? Why am I being hired? What's the impact going to be to the bottom line? And then you could be real proactive, say, how are we, if we're going to have a successful year in 2021, what's that going to look like? And how's my position help achieve that goal? And how does COVID impact this? And what are we going to do to get around all that stuff? And if there is one, what is your return policy? And if you don't have one, do you plan on having one? How can we be proactive here? And now, we've had 7 or 8 months of experience working remotely. How's this changed the opinion of the company? Well, I told you earlier that CB Richard Ellis reported that 47% of their commercial leases were being changed, either not renewed or downsized, different footprints. So obviously companies are now looking at remote work differently than they did a year ago. So find out what the company is thinking about. Now, lastly, I want to talk about finding a coach. And to do that, there are a couple of questions that you want to ask, because if you get the right coach and you connect, the symbiotic relationship is going to help you fly through this process. So you want to find out what they did. Were they a hiring manager? Did they have to fire people? That's real important. How long have they been coaching? How many people have they helped successfully land jobs? What's the scope of their service? And most importantly, what do they charge? Do they have a specific fee structure? And 70% of the jobs are never posted. So a coach can help you find that hidden job market. 85% of the jobs are found or filled through networking, and most companies rely on you being walked in, because 50% of your salary gets paid to a recruiter. But if you're walked in by an employee, the company will pay that employee maybe $1,000 or $2,000 bonus. So your goal is to find out what companies are offering this type of an incentive to their employees. Boy, there's something going on with my mouse here tonight. Make sure your resume is user-friendly. And we teach a class on how to format your resume for the particular software the companies are using. Because recruiters, once it gets in, if it gets in, they only spend about 6 seconds on your resume as they're going through those 200-300 applicants. Also, recruiters and hiring managers will eliminate resumes based on email. And I had a fellow who sent me a resume, and his email was freakyfreddy@hotmail. So that got my attention. And I drilled down on social media and found out Freaky Freddy really did have a freaky life in his private life. So be careful. As I said earlier, 67%, that's what the current number is. 67% of online applications never get seen because they're either blocked by the applicant tracking system or they get pushed to the bottom of the line because they don't score high enough in their match. As I said earlier, it takes about 42 days for every $10,000 to $15,000 in salary that you're replacing. Let's talk a little bit about your social media. We've got 5 minutes left, so we'll blast through this in a hurry. But all of these things are terribly important. And the reason is that 98% of all recruiters will look at LinkedIn, but 60% look at Facebook, and 40% look at Twitter. And then they use that, especially if you've got 200, 300 applicants, you're going to have equally qualified candidates. So they start digging down. And if they find something in your social media that just isn't a match to the company, that's just a little different, you're not going to be chosen. And I can tell you, I've got 2 people right now from major healthcare facilities in Wisconsin who were fired for posts that they put on their social media in the last couple of weeks. So, and they both hired attorneys, and both attorneys said, don't even fight it, you're going to lose. So be careful what's out there. Now, what I want you to do is do some soul searching. So if you were to interview yourself, would you hire yourself? And if you would say, I think I would, that's not convincing enough. So you do need to sit down with a coach. There are many different ways to skin the cat. There are a lot of ways that you can control your destiny. And we're here to help. We'll do whatever we can. Now, here's your assignment when you leave here. This is a full-time job. So you want to spend time focusing on making sure your office is set up, find your coach, do your plan, find some workshops, attend them, take notes, deal with your coach, being able to ask questions and learn from each of these things, sign up for a job search work team, and then get good. Practice virtual networking and interviewing. It doesn't come naturally. Weekly, you want to have 35 hours spent working on job search, 30 to 35 hours. You want to do minimum 30 hours every single day on LinkedIn. Don't let it get away from you. You have to post. You have to become relevant. There are all kinds of activities that you can do to increase your relevancy and your hit rate on LinkedIn. You want to keep at least 10 targets in your pipeline at all times, and that's networking in to decision makers, at least one target company. So you have 10 target companies, you want at least one decision maker at each one. And then at the end of every day, keep track of all the good things that you've accomplished, because you could be winning, but think you're losing if you're not keeping score. So paid political announcement, we're done. This is the Barrington Career Center. As I mentioned, we've assisted over 9,500 members since 1996. We have personalized one-on-one coaching where we do assessments and so forth. We do workshops and we do networking. The coaching is done by seasoned retired executives from international corporations. Most of them have been here in Chicago, and when they retire, they come to us as volunteer coaches. They'll help you do your plan. Then we'll also work with you on virtual workshops. The ones that are the key are being able to understand what you're navigating, doing your assessments with strengths finders, creating your job search plan. And then we have all these other ones that are out there. Notice the one on handling ageism. So if you're over 50, I can tell you ageism is alive and it's rampant out there. We have a workshop on how to handle that. And we also then, when you get to the end of your rope, I know you have a workshop coming up on a side gig. We do something similar to that. It's called Plan B. When your job search stalls, how do you replace that income? How can you retire comfortably? And that's a workshop that we do very regularly. Then the networking, we have the executive leadership group for the C-suite people. We have the executive networking group, which is for vice presidents and directors. And we have job search work teams for everybody else. And it's all accountability groups. That's me, that's my phone number, and that's my story. So if we have any questions in the chat room, I'd be happy to answer them right now.
That was so wonderful, Bill. Thank you so much. We don't have any questions in chat, but I'm wondering if anyone would like to ask a question out loud. You can feel free to raise your hand and I can go ahead and unmute you. Otherwise, if you're uncomfortable speaking aloud, feel free to take this opportunity to chat us your questions now. Any takers?
I spoke a lot. I probably put some people to sleep.
No, I don't think so at all. It was jam-packed with a lot of information, a lot of useful information. Folks might just be processing that. Do we have any? Oh, we have a question. What if you are from a different country?
Well, we do have candidates that we work with. I have had a workshop last week with people from Canada, mostly from Montreal, and I do not speak French, but we did get through it. We do have international companies that we work with. So if you are trying to do a job search project plan, you set up your targets and then use LinkedIn to get into the those countries or those companies. And for instance, Ford Motor Company, we do a lot of work with, I've done a lot of work with Ford Motor Company and Marriott. Those two companies have locations all over the world. And what they do is they will pick a location and then link to that location to find out who the employees are and then build their relationships.
You know, that was my mistake, Bill. She was actually asking different county. But I appreciate both answers are good.
We currently are serving 37 townships. Now, the name of the group is Barrington Career Center, but we have 37 townships that we are serving unemployed people with. So we're everywhere. And we have people, we do, as I said, have people in other countries as well.
Wonderful. And we did have a couple of questions about whether or not this presentation was recorded, and it was in fact recorded. And barring any technical difficulties on our end, we will be uploading that to the Arlington Heights Memorial Library YouTube page, just so everyone knows. I will put the Barrington Career Center's, oh, sorry, I'm going to put that in the chat so everyone has access to that. And then let's see if we have any other questions. Oh, you got a compliment, Bill. One of the best seminars in the recent past.
Oh my,
that's awesome. Let me just make sure I'm not missing anything else. Any other questions? Megan, do you see anything that I'm missing in the chat? Oh, I do see. How can we be sure that the person who contacts us isn't scamming us, isn't a scammer?
From the somebody attempting to link with you on LinkedIn or connect with you on LinkedIn?
I'm not sure if this person wants to clarify.
She can call me.
Either in chat or raise your hand.
Yeah. Yeah, I can pull up the slide with my information on it again. There we go. And any other questions?
I am not seeing any others.
Okay.
Oh, hold on. Oh, nope, just a thank you.
Well, I'm honored.
Like there are a couple of false endings.
Yeah, thanks so very much for taking the time this evening from your family to listen to this. Again, we're pouring 8-10 hours worth of material into an hour and a half. So I apologize that you're sipping from a fire hose, but certainly reach out to us. I'd be more than honored to talk to you and help guide you. And if we can provide a service, we'd be happy to do that as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bill.
My pleasure.
And if we don't have any other questions, you can all feel free to exit the webinar. I'm just going to ask Bill to stick around for just another minute so that he and I can chat. But thank you everyone again so much for attending this program. And thank you so much, Bill. That was wonderful.
My pleasure. Thank you.